Man may labor and toil to attain a certain kind of leisure in retirement, and then find that after all, he yearns for the old busy days and the old occupations he had thought himself so glad to leave. I had already begun to miss the daily toil of my previous employment when, tout à coup, I was flung back into the midst of the most perversely fascinating wonders that there is in the world, the study of human nature. A journal came into my possession in which a murderer had taken the trouble to record for posterity the thoughts that had accompanied the crime most dastardly. Rarely have I come across such bitterness, such envy and contempt of others, such haughtiness misplaced. Our village, King's Abbot, is, I imagine, very much like any other English village. A chilly medieval church stands at the top of a single street of stone-built cottages. At the bottom of the street, a bridge crosses a stream where the snotty-nosed offspring of the poor perfect the most advanced skill they will ever possess. Although to the casual observer, King's Abbot is a friendly place, everything is not as it seems. Just scratch the surface, and you will find more jealousies and rivalries than ancient Rome. My little book is about the murder of Roger Ackroyd, the events leading up to it, the subsequent numbskull investigation, and the final revelation of the reason of the guilty party.
Hello?
Now I give up. You shall torment me no longer. I will kill you. My dear doctor, I beg of you 1,000 pardons. But these vegetable marrows, they have driven me to the edges of barbarity. Please to forgive me. I am ashamed I prostrate myself.
What's the trouble, Bob?
Oh, you know, doctor, it is my desire to grow a vegetable marrow of the proportions she's gone past. And you have seen how I nurse her. Each day I give to her water. Each day I weed around her with my very best tweezers. And when those little flowers of hers, they show themselves, I remove them all. But why? So that her strength is maybe conserved. Does she appreciate this concept? She grows to the size of the conventional. Then she rests upon her laurels.
You mustn't upset yourself for her.
No, you are correct. But you can figure it for yourself, James. When one retires, one hurls oneself into new pursuits. Pardon, Monsieur Parker. What can I do for you?
I've come to take you to the factory, sir.
But it is just struck 10 o'clock. My appointment was not until 11.
Yes, but Mr. Ackroyd hoped you wouldn't mind it being earlier. He's got a bit of a busy day.
Our only captain of industry is the Bulgarian, Mr. Roger Ackroyd. The factory from which Ackroyd's ill-gotten wealth emanates encapsulates the life we lead here. Ferment and turmoil.
You a penny, Poirot? Thank you. You, Monsieur Poirot, what you're asking to do then.
It is here that he lines his pockets by combining unlikely chemicals to make unnecessary products, while befouling the very air we breathe. He likes to think of himself as a scientist.
I'm afraid the noise was a bit too much for you, Poirot.
I envy you, mon ami. Who would have thought those experiments at the back of your little shop would have led to this? Your country house with a mile or two away, and yet here we have the challenges and triumphs of great industry.
I'm eternally grateful to you for that person. No problem. Can't say you're not without your own triumphs. Now you've got your reward, peace and quiet of the country. Your God. You don't regret retiring down here.
For 30 years I was exposed to the dark side of life. It takes its toll, you know.
Sure it does.
And now, as you say, I have my reward.
Excuse me, Mr. Ackroyd. What is it, Raymond? Mr. Peyton, is it? Mr. Peyton. Your stepson, sir. I know who Mr. Peyton is. Thank you, Mr. Raymond. Let him in. I said, I understand that.
Bien. Now I must return to King's Abbot. Thank you very much, my friend, for showing to me your factory magnificence.
I can't understand why you haven't been here before. You've been here nearly a year now. All in all, it's been a good week for me. Read your newspaper on Saturday morning, Poirot, on the forthcoming marriage.
You mean your stepson, Mademoiselle Flora? Pleased to accept my congratulations.
Ah, Ralph, my dear boy, you remember Monsieur Poirot?
Yes, of course. How are you, Mr. Poirot?
I am well, thank you. I regret I am on the point of departure.
I'll get Parker to run you home. See to it, Raymond.
Merci.
Au revoir.
Goodbye.
What are you doing here?
With his ill-gotten gains, Ackroyd has built himself a truly ostentatious house, spending a fortune on architects and surveyors' fees, no doubt. He lives there with the former wife of his deceased brother, Mrs. Vera Ackroyd, and her daughter, Flora, vultures eagerly awaiting his demise.
That's all, Mrs. Ackroyd. Tea, wonderful. Hello, Ursula. Shall I talk to you too, Miss Flora? Yes, thank you.
Isn't this exciting?
Tea?
Of course, the forthcoming announcement. And not before its time, either.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'll get a cloth.
I really don't know where Roger finds these girls. He's spoken to Ralph.
No, Mummy, he's in London.
I think he might telephone on the occasion of his engagement.
I came down last night. I'm staying at the White Hart. Look, Father,
What's wrong with Fernley Park all of a sudden?
there's nothing wrong with Fernley Park. Look, I heard you were going to announce the engagement.
Flora's all for it.
Well, yes, perhaps she is.
You've been putting it off and putting it off for 3 months now, Nick.
I've been trying to find a job, Father.
I always told your late mother that I would look after you as if you were my own son.
I know, but...
No buts. Didn't I say I did not want to be disturbed?
Mrs. Farrell is on the telephone.
Oh. Hello?
I've got to see you. There's something I've got to tell you.
I'll try to come round later this afternoon. I don't work. I'll definitely come round later this afternoon. I'll be there.
The highly strung and unpredictable Dorothy Farrows is something of an enigma to the villagers. She lives alone in considerable comfort, thanks to the wealth she inherited from her late husband, a sot who died in suspicious circumstances last year.
Not Shepherd. In 10 minutes.
Who was that?
Inspector Davis. Now, tell me, Mary, my girl. Why'd you come to work so early?
Friday was her morning to go riding. She'd like to be out of the house before 6 o'clock.
All right, Mary, thank you. Go get yourself a cup of tea, eh? Vernal.
You think it's suicide?
Ask me after the inquest.
It was 2 years since her husband died, isn't it?
Almost exactly. Did you find a note?
Oh, yes.
Shepard, I want to talk to you. You've heard about Mrs. Ferrers?
Yes, I only saw her yesterday afternoon. Come to Fernley Park tonight, 7:30.
I've been thinking about Dottie Ferris. She must have taken the Vernal on purpose. Remorse.
Remorse?
You never would listen to me last year when I told you how she poisoned that awful husband of hers. This proves it. Oh, hello. You come in.
Thank you.
We have our visitors here.
Oh, pardon, doctor, you're at your luncheon.
No, we've just finished.
Erco's come round with a little job for you.
Oui. Ma bon Dieu de voyage.
Mon Dieu.
Ah, carriage clock. How say you, James? Perhaps I have overwhelmed her?
No, that's as if she just needs a good clean.
Ah,
I'll do what I can with it.
it's good, I think, to have the hobby. No?
You've got your garden for it.
Good morning.
Oh, right.
My dear girl, it's quite on the cards that you're trying to cut me off with a shilling.
Well,
Because I'm actually fed up with you the last few years. A little more would do it. I need the dips. I'll be a very rich man when the old fellow pops off. You don't want him to go on to his will.
Why are you staying here, not to say?
You could leave this to me. Don't worry.
very well for you.
You'll feel more comfortable in a day or two, I'm sure.
Thank you, Doctor.
James, oh my God.
Goodbye.
He wasn't on your panel.
Now, my dear sister, cash.
I saw something quite peculiar just now.
Really?
First of all, Ralph Peyton is here and staying at the White Hart.
Staying there?
Staying there. And he was talking to a girl. Couldn't quite see who she was. Presumably it was Flora. That doesn't make any sense. Like you. Makes even less sense if it wasn't.
There is evil in this village, Poirot. Downright evil. But tell me what has happened, mon ami.
You didn't know Ashley Ferris, did you?
No, I believe that he had died before I arrived.
Yes, I thought so. After he died, there were all sorts of rumors flying about.
But he said what happened since.
Anyway, the coroner said gastritis, exacerbated by acute alcoholism, then peritonitis. And that was that. Until yesterday. Yesterday I found out he was poisoned.
Poison.
Look, I might as well tell you this, Poirot. I've been, well, in love with Dorothy Ferris for years. She telephoned me yesterday. Very upset. Wanted to see me. She broke down completely. She told me everything. Her hatred of that brute of a husband. Her growing feelings for me. And the dreadful means she'd taken to poison. Murder. Cold-blooded murder. Terrible thing is, she must have seen the shot in my face. I mean, I couldn't disguise it. I drove her to suicide.
But it was reported that her death was accidental. You must not blame yourself, mon ami.
I know, but she also told me something else. It seemed that there was one person who'd known about the murder all along. And he was blackmailing her for huge sums.
And do you know who was this person?
She wouldn't tell me his name. As a matter of fact, she didn't even say it was a man, but, well, they're not going to get away with it.
You intend to hunt down this blackmailer?
If only Dottie had left a note, she might have given a name.
Roger, you must be careful.
Thank you, Ursula. Ah, Shepard. Good evening. Good evening. Evening, Poirot.
Good evening, James.
I'll just see Monsieur Poirot. Go on into the city.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Ah,
Hello, Dr. Shepherd. I didn't know you were coming this evening. No, you've got to congratulate me.
indeed.
Look, I'm going to marry Ralph.
I know you'll both be very happy.
Oh, we've been engaged for 3 months now. It's going to be announced officially tomorrow.
Why, Dr. Shepherd?
Good evening, Mrs. Ackland.
Is it true about poor Mrs. Barron?
She died last night, yes.
Did she... Was it suicide?
We don't know.
Woman.
Oh, well. Life must go on, I suppose.
I wish you'd tell me about these antique things, Dr. Shepherd. I'm sure you know what they all are.
Well, just because I'm an antique myself.
Ah, Shepard, there you are. Look, you're staying to dinner, aren't you? We can talk later.
Friendly Park? No, he's at dinner at the moment, Mr. Poirot.
At dinner?
Yes.
Could I leave a message for him to call me back? I'm at my cottage.
I'll ask him to call you.
And Monsieur Parker, will you be sure to give him the message now?
Certainly, sir.
So I said, just because you're breaking eggs, it doesn't mean that you're making an omelette.
My late husband detested omelettes.
Mr. Poirot, sir. I told him you would do.
Thank you, Parker. I'll phone him later.
No, my late husband disliked anything remotely to do with chickens.
Last post. Feels like it too.
Thanks, Barney. Good evening, Chris.
the other letters on the table, Violet.
Yes.
My dear, my very dear Roger,
There is one thing a murderer may rely on for protection, that the account of every witness would be radically different from the account of every other, even though all were present on the same occasion.
I trust you enjoyed your dinner, Dr. Shepherd.
Indeed I did. Thank you, Father. Oh, I'll just go and say goodnight to the ladies.
Yes.
You have to go, Doctor.
Unfortunately, I do. Good night. And once again, congratulations, Flora.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Shepherd. Good night.
As you appreciate, I get many questions.
Okay. Mr. Ackroyd says he doesn't want to be disturbed tonight.
Oh, very well, Miss Flora.
Well, it doesn't sound like very interesting, even, I must say. Did you hear anything about Ralph?
Well, yes. I heard he got officially engaged to Flora at last.
What was that I heard him saying to her this afternoon at the White Hart?
Who can say, my dear?
Oh, no. Why do people always choose bedtime as their home?
Not Shepherd. What? Yeah. I'll come at once.
What is it? What is it, Ted?
It's Parker from Fernley. You just found Roger Ackroyd murdered.
Yes,
Where is he? Have you called the police?
please.
What's the matter with you, Parker? Your master has been found murdered.
Murdered, sir?
Didn't you telephone me 5 minutes ago and tell me Mr. Ackroyd had been found murdered?
No, indeed, sir. Oh, great.
Do you mean to say? Oh. Then I should like to strangle whoever the joker is.
I can just check if you like, sir, see if everything's all right.
No, sir.
Let me just go and see, sir.
Where's everybody else?
The ladies have gone to bed, sir. I believe Mr. Raymond is still up. Seems to be locked.
Perhaps he's just gone up to bed.
I've never known him to lock this door before. Keys in the lock on the other side.
Ackroyd! Ackroyd!
He may have fallen asleep.
Sorry, Parker.
Dr. Shepherd, sir!
Out of the way! Note the fewer people disturb this room. Ring the police station.
Yes, right away. Mr. Ackroyd's been murdered.
What did you say? It's Mr. Ackroyd, sir. He's dead. In the study. What are you doing here?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Poirot. You better come in. Just telephoning the police.
What has happened, Monsieur Poirot?
Mr. Ackroyd's been killed, sir. Murdered.
Who would do such a terrible thing?
Poirot, go. Nobody's been here. What do you think?
They have failed, my friend.
Our local police are a constant source of harmless amusement. A year ago, they could not even see that the death of Ashley Farrers was murder. This time, they would probably claim that Ackroyd committed suicide.
Ackroyd was in such a strange mood all day. Mrs. Ferrers dying hit him badly.
Has this been moved to talk?
I ascertained that life was extinct. Nothing more.
Who found the body?
The butler, Parker, and myself. I'd been here to dinner, but I was back at home when I got a telephone call from Parker telling me Mr. Ackroyd had been murdered.
Parker had already found the body. No, sir. I didn't make any phone call, sir.
Wait a minute. Dr. Shepherd
I
says.
didn't phone, sir. I swear I didn't. Did it sound like Parker's voice on the telephone?
I can't say I noticed. I took it for granted, you see.
How odd. Anyway, you came in here.
Broke the door down. It was locked from the inside.
Did anyone check the window? Well, it's the way the murder came in, all right, and went out. Look. Made by a boot with a rubber sole, sir. Mr. Ackroyd last seen alive.
I left at 9 o'clock. He was certainly alive then.
He was alive at 9:30. I heard him talking in the study.
Who was he talking to?
Don't know. At the time, I assumed it was Dr. Shepherd. But in fact, he'd already left.
Did you ever hear any of the conversation?
Just a fragment. Mr. Ackroyd said something like, "Calls on my purse have been so frequent of late that it is impossible for me to accede to your request." I didn't hear any more.
The demand for money may be important. If you'll excuse me, Inspector Davis. Miss Flora saw him after 9:30. I saw her leave the study at 10:10. Send someone to get her, will you? Yes, sir. I don't know you, sir. What's your name? This is Hercule Poirot, Inspector. You're a famous detective? Oh, yes? What are you doing here?
Monsieur Ackroyd, Inspector, I was with him earlier this evening.
When was the last time you saw Mr. Ackroyd alive?
We said goodbye at 7:36. I then went home.
What are you doing here now?
Monsieur Ackroyd was in a mood of great upset. I was worried about him, and I made my return.
Thank you, sir.
I have to say this. Mr. Ralph Peyton is down here from London. He came to the factory to see Mr. Ackroyd. They had words.
What about?
I don't really know. Something to do with Mr. Ackroyd's will, I think.
This is awful. It can't be true.
Mr. Ackroyd, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask a few questions. Parker says he saw you coming out of your uncle's study at 10:10. Is that right?
Do you think I am a murderer?
No, I'm just trying to place everyone in the house. Find out what they've seen or heard.
Yes, I do go in to say goodnight to Uncle Roger.
At 10:10.
I don't know. Yes, about then.
Was he alone?
Yes.
Did you notice if the window was open or shut?
I don't know. I didn't look. Well, the curtains were drawn anyway. Oh, God.
Can I drive you home?
Oh, merci. I prefer to walk.
Τώρα τα σταθερά πακέτα ηλεκτρικής ενέργειας Genius με νέες χαμηλότερες τιμές. Γίνε και εσύ Genius από 19 ευρώ το μήνα. Κάλεσε στο 18311 ή επισκέψου ένα κατάστημα Κοσμοτέ ή Γερμανός. Προτέχεια. Έτσι δείχνουμε το δρόμο προς το μέλλον της ενέργειας.
Σούπερ καλοκαιρινές εκπτώσεις στην ηλεκτρονέτ. Κλιματιστικό Inventor Premium 9.000 BTU με 10 χρόνια εγγύηση και ιονιστή για απόλυτα υγιεινή ατμόσφαιρα μόνο 429 ευρώ. Και για αγορές από τα καταστήματα όλα τα κλιματιστικά Inventor με δωρεάν εγκατάσταση και 12 άδικες δόσεις. Ηλεκτρονέτ. Σχέση εμπιστοσύνης.
Δυσκολιότητα. Dulcosoft με ουδέτερη γεύση. Ανακουφίζει φυσικά, επαναφέροντας τη φυσιολογική λειτουργία του εντέρου. Dulcosoft. Κατάλληλο και για παιδιά.
Είμαστε έτοιμοι. Είμαστε έτοιμοι.
Πανέτοιμοι να σας καλωσορίσουμε.
Να σας βολτάρουμε.
Να σας περιποιηθούμε.
Να σας ξεναγήσουμε. Να σας κακομάτουμε. Είμαστε έτοιμοι. Να σας πάμε και να σας φέρουμε με ασφάλεια και πολυτέλεια.
Με 11.880. Το πρόγραμμα είναι κατάλληλο για άνω των 8 ετών.
From now on, the deception began in earnest. You could scarcely move for people protesting how innocent they were or pointing the finger of guilt at someone else. There was so much smoke, you could hardly see across the high street. Such larks.
Oh, hello, Flora.
I came to see Mr. POIROT. He's here.
Well, he's terribly upset, actually. My brother's with him now. We both came round.
Who would have seen Agatha such a man, James?
Well, it's difficult to say.
The question was a rhetorical one, my lady.
Flora. Mr. POIROT, I'm sorry to burst in on you.
Mademoiselle?
But the police think that Ralph murdered my uncle. He didn't do it, Mr. POIROT. He really didn't.
I cannot help you, mademoiselle.
But you're a detective.
Your uncle was Monsieur Poirot's friend.
In any case, mademoiselle, I am now retired. I work no longer.
I'll pay you. I'll find the money somehow.
It's not a question of money.
Come. What am I going to do? What am I going to do?
Where's Ralph now?
I don't know. Not exactly. Uncle Roger told me yesterday he was staying at the White Hart. But he's not there now. They told me he left in the middle of the night. But he's left all his things behind.
I see.
No, you don't see. Ralph may have done some foolish things in the past. But he wouldn't murder anyone.
Mademoiselle, I cannot help you as you wish.
But
I will go to the Inspector Davis and speak on your behalf. That may do some good.
Between ourselves, Chief Inspector, my money's on Ralph Payton's stepson. He's...
That foreign gentleman to see you, Inspector.
I don't want to be disturbed.
I will take only 5 minutes of your time, Inspector.
I know that voice.
Chief Inspector Jackson!
I knew the name King's whatchamacallit sounded familiar.
Oh, my dear friend!
Poirot.
That was I thinking you'd retired. And I come down here and find you mixed up in murders and all sorts. No, Chief Inspector. I am not, as you say, all mixed up. No, Monsieur Roger Ackroyd was my very old friend. That is all. Yeah, but you don't help us out, though, aren't you? Well, we talk of all these cabbage bashers. No. Chief Inspector, I have been idle for too long. Now, come on, Poirot. Be like old times. Very well. But, Inspector Davis, Mademoiselle Ackroyd tells me you suspect most strongly Ralph Payton.
It's either him or the butler. What have we got against Payton? First, he left the White Hart last night and hadn't been clean since. Secondly, it said he's in serious financial difficulties and probably profit from the will. And thirdly, it said he had a row with a victim.
Sounds pretty fruity. Perhaps a little too fruity, mon ami.
We'll see about that. I've got here a pair of shoes which we got from the White Hart. I'm going to compare them to the footmarks on a windowsill.
Has anyone seen any suspicious strangers hanging around here? Any strangers calling on Mr. Ackroyd at all over the last week or so?
Yes, there was. That young man called himself a salesman on Wednesday. He was in with Mr. Ackroyd a good hour. No. That was a perfectly innocent salesman. He came to the factory trying to sell dictaphones, and Mr. Ackroyd had him come here to demonstrate. Mr. Tuffman, his name was.
Yes, all right. Now, let's get back to the events of last night.
There was something, though, last night, Chief Inspector.
Yeah.
I was on the terrace outside the sitting room, smoking at about 9:30, and I saw, well, I thought I saw, a woman disappearing into the bushes near the summer house. But just a gleam of white, you know.
No idea who it was?
I'm not even sure. It could have been just a trick of the moonlight, you know.
Yes, all right, thank you. Now, when you, Dr. Shepherd, and you, Parker, break the door down, you are confronted by the sight of Mr. Ackroyd dead in this chair. Correct. If I may, Chief Inspector.
Of course.
Thank you. Is this room exactly as it was then?
The curtains were drawn, sir. And the electric light was on.
Anything else?
Yes, that chair was drawn out a little more.
Show me. Where is the key, Curio? How say you, Chief Inspector? No one would sit in a chair in such a position, I fancy. Well, it's not a place for it to be, all right, but I can't see that it's very important. No, it is completely unimportant. That is why it is so interesting.
These shoes match the marks on the windowsill precisely.
Of course they do, Inspector. Of course they do. For the moment, Ralph Payton is the chief suspect. If muddy shoes could convict, they'd have him swinging from the gallows by the morning. There is only one problem. The spineless Lothario is nowhere to be found.
Oh, Mr. Ackroyd built this house, you know. Designed it and everything. These modern houses, you see, generally they don't have the facilities for staff like proper houses. Mr. Ackroyd, he wanted it just so.
He was a good employer.
He could be short with you, good Mr. Ackroyd, but he was always fair. We shan't see his like again.
Tell me, Monsieur Parker, what is your opinion of the secretary, Monsieur Raymond?
He's a bit of a stick, to tell the truth, Mr. Poirot, but he's all right.
It's just that he told to Inspector Davis last night that he overheard Monsieur Ackroyd talking in his study at 9:30. I am not disposed to believe him.
I don't know about that, sir. I don't think Mr. Raymond's the type to tell an untruth. But there is something, I mean, I haven't mentioned it before, but it's been nagging away at the back of my mind like.
It was usually kept in the display case in the sitting room. I'm sure it was in there just before dinner last night.
Excuse me, Chief Inspector. Monsieur Parker would like to show to us something. Monsieur Parker.
It's these. They came in the Evening Post last night.
So what?
Well, there were 5 when I brought them in.
Now there are 4.
I noticed particularly because these are all business sort of letters, and there was one more, personal one, handwritten, dark blue envelope, quite distinctive.
Perhaps Mr. Ackroyd put it in his pocket.
Was there any such letter discovered on the body, Inspector?
No. So this will be the French windows into the sitting room.
Yes, Chief Inspector, inside of which was the case that contained the murderous weapon conveniently within reach. And along here, no other window overlooks the terrace till we come to the study of Monsieur Roger Ackroyd.
Chief Inspector? Just had a call from the GPO. They traced that telephone call that Dr. Shepherd got. It was logged at 10:15 last night from a public telephone box at King's Abbot Railway Station. And at 10:23, the night mail leaves for Liverpool.
Well, why should the murderer telephone at all? Seems no rhyme, no reason to it.
No, there was a reason, Chief Inspector, of that you can be sure. And when we know it, we will know everything.
Everyone tells me it's been fine and dry here for a fortnight. So how did those muddy footprints get on the windowsill?
Oh, that is easy, Chief Inspector. See you there? The gardener has left dripping the dirt.
Oh, yeah. Ah, there's the same footprint again.
You see also there the footprint of the lady?
Well, there's plenty of women in the house.
Come, Chief Inspector. Let us investigate together the summer house.
My Emily wanted one of these, but it didn't seem quite right in Isleworth. What you got, Warren? Oh, a bit of cloth from a handkerchief, so.
Remember this, Chief Inspector. The good laundry, it does not starch the handkerchief.
The organization is in disorder today because of Mr. Ackroyd's absence. Hardly. But his guiding hand is not missed. Mr. Ackroyd's guiding hand is more likely to hold things up than... I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. The truth is, I handle all the day-to-day running of the business. Not that I got any thanks for it.
Sundry creditors, £403, 7 shillings and 4 pence.
Mr. Hammond is Mr. Ackroyd's personal lawyer as well as acting for the company.
I'm Detective Chief Inspector Jack from Scotland Yard, and this is Hercule Poirot.
Private decision.
We need to know what's in Mr. Ackroyd's will.
See? But I shall be coming down to the house later on anyway for the reading.
So much to do. Oh, so much to do.
Yes, what's in the will?
The will consists of a series of legacies and bequests.
Such as?
Well, there's £500 to his secretary, Mr. Geoffrey Raymond. Then Mrs. Vera Ackroyd receives the income from £10,000 worth of shares during her lifetime, while her daughter, Flora Ackroyd, inherits £20,000 outright.
And the majority of the estate?
The residue, including Fernley Park and the shares in Ackroyd Chemicals, to his adopted son, Mr. Ralph Peyton.
Tell me, the estate of Monsieur Roger Ackroyd, it was very large?
Yes, indeed. Mr. Peyton will be a very wealthy young man.
Merci. Tell me, Chief Inspector, the station master at King's Abbot, was he of any help?
Not a lot, I'm afraid. Nobody remembers anybody using the phone box. But about that time, you got the London train coming in on one platform and the Liverpool train on the other, so...
But did anyone seem to board these trains?
Well, the porter remembers a young man getting on the train to Liverpool. He thinks. Mind you.
Voilà.
She looks pretty browned off.
Let us go and cheer her up, Chief Inspector.
Bonjour, Mademoiselle Ackroyd.
Oh, certainly.
There's something I've been meaning to ask you, Miss Ackroyd. Did you go anywhere near the summer house on the night of the murder?
Summer house? No.
Only someone, a lady, was seen in its vicinity.
Well, it wasn't me.
This would have been about 9:30.
Thank you, mademoiselle. You have been most helpful.
I've got to get back to the house anyway.
I was just getting started with her.
Very likely. Is she out of sight, Chief Inspector?
Yeah. What are you doing, Poirot?
Poirot? Always, one must keep the eyes on the alert, mon ami. One little glint in the sunlight. Voilà.
There's a wedding ring.
Yes,
Woman's probably, by the size of it.
very likely. Do you think this will stay?
Funny place to find a wedding ring. Oh, hang on. There's an inscription. From R. March the 13th. Do we know who R might be? No.
Oh, Mr. Raymond. Not now, Chief Inspector. What's going on?
I don't rightly know, sir. Something's gone missing.
At Burnley Park was quite trustworthy.
What's happened? Some money is missing.
Stolen.
We don't know that.
£40, Mr. Poirot, from poor Roger's bedroom.
Mr. Hammond was down from London to read the will. He asked Raymond if there was cash in the house. It has to be included in the estate, of course. When Raymond went to get it from Mr. Ackroyd's bedroom, it was gone.
I never thought the staff here were trustworthy.
Come, Mrs. Ackroyd.
Right, who's the current suspect?
The parlour maid, Ursula, she was given her notice yesterday. Doubtless she thought she'd leave with a little unearned.
You got Ursula Bourne? I understand you're leaving.
Yes.
Where is that?
It's arranged some papers on Mr. Ackroyd's desk. He was very angry about it and said I could leave.
Let me tell you, my girl, a considerable amount of money, £40, is missing from this will.
If you think I took it and that is why Mr. Ackroyd dismissed me, well then you're wrong.
Well, it seems two things.
It was yesterday afternoon that Monsieur Roger Ackroyd dismissed you, was it not? How long did it last, this
Interview?
The interview between you and Monsieur Ackroyd in the study? 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour?
Something like that.
Half an hour.
Not longer.
Merci, mademoiselle.
Not one flipping penny. 6 years I worked for that bastard. Not one flipping penny.
Well, that's what they're like, isn't it?
Well, who do you think's got the last laugh? Who knows all the little family secrets, then?
Come on, plenty of room. Come on. Come on, you bastard. Plenty of room.
First, Roger Ackroyd brutally stabbed in his study. Now his manservant Parker, deliberately run down by a motor car. Has the killer no mercy? No conception of the difficulty of finding good servants. Our dud detectives continue to run around in circles.
Why would anyone want to kill the butler?
Perhaps he was going to reveal to us something. But tell me, Chief Inspector, what did you think of the story told to us by the parlour maid?
What story?
The story of a dismissal. To dismiss a servant, does it take half an hour?
Well, that was in the afternoon, wasn't it? I can't have anything to do with the murder.
I am not sure. Perhaps in time the scrap of cambric that I found will tell us.
You're doing what you always do, Poirot.
What is that, Chief Inspector?
Confusing me. Just when I think I'm getting a grip on the case.
Tell to me, Chief Inspector, what is your grip?
Well, you've got to be logical, you see, Poirot.
Wait, yes, you.
All right. Now, what have we got? The last person to see Roger Ackroyd alive was Dr. Shepherd, who left him at 9 o'clock.
You know, you forget Mademoiselle Flora Ackroyd, who went in to say goodnight to him at 10 minutes after 10.
Oh.
Do not disquiet yourself, Chief Inspector. I do not believe her. Please, to continue.
Oh. But why would she? Anyway, then Raymond heard Ackroyd talking to somebody at 9:30. Ralph Payton disappeared from his lodgings on the night of the murder, and nobody's seen him since. The person Ackroyd was talking to was asking for money. Ralph Payton was always in financial trouble, and he's the chief beneficiary of the victim's will. Ralph Payton had a round with the victim. Ralph Payton's footprints are all over the windowsill. So who is the murderer, do you think, Chief Inspector? Very amusing, Poirot. Look, if Payton were innocent, come forward, wouldn't he?
May we? That is a theory, that. Certainly, you have the little pressures of a gun. But it leaves unaccounted a great deal.
What, for instance?
The chair that was moved. Oh, not the chair again. Oh, it was put out, it was pushed back. Perhaps the murderer was afraid that one day Mr. Parker would realize of its significance.
I'm trying to deal in facts here, Poirot.
But the chair is a fact, mon ami. As are the telephone calls, the wedding ring discarded, the 40 pounds missing, and the murder of Monsieur Parker.
Why?
Madame Shepherd.
Isn't it terrible, that poor Parker? Won't you introduce me to your friend?
Yes, of course, madame. The sister of Dr. Shepherd, Chief Inspector Jack of Scotland Yard.
I thought it must be. How exciting.
How did it?
Mind you, I'm beginning to think that Roger Ackroyd is anything but Parker too. Something to truth to think about. Bye.
Decidedly, it is time
C'est Monsieur le Président.
Doctor, asseyez-vous là.
Thank you.
To begin with, I make a special plea to you, mademoiselle. Wait. If you know the whereabouts of Monsieur Peyton, I beg of you most earnestly to persuade me.
Monsieur Poirot, I swear solemnly to you, I had no idea where that was. I have neither seen him nor heard of him on the day of the murder or since.
Bien! Let's that! You others, all of you, friends and intimates of Mr. Ross Peyton, if you know where the missing man he is hiding, speak out. I need to know, and I shall. Back to you.
Mr.
Poirot, Madame Collier, tell me what? Ah, 1,000 apologies, Madame, for calling on you like this.
Not at all.
I have seen the references that you were good enough to provide for a former parliament of Mademoiselle Ursula Bon.
Yes.
And it was just over a year ago since she left you, I understand.
Yes. Yes, it was. That's quite right.
So I was wondering if there was anything more you can tell me about her. For example, she comes from where? Her family?
I don't know at all.
I see. Then who was her employer before she came to you?
I really don't remember. Is it necessary to ask all these questions?
Oh, Madame, pardon. I did not think you would object to answering.
Taxi! The News Chronicle in Fleet Street, s'il vous plaît.
All right. Put your watch away. You know how the lateness it distresses me. Mr. Hammond?
Good day, Judge Inspector. This is indeed a treat. So much joy, such dagger.
What did you discover at the apartment, Monsieur Peyton?
Absolutely nothing. A bed, a table, a chair. Nobody's been there for a week.
Did you get for me the list of nursing homes? Merci.
There's nothing I can eat here, Poirot. It's all macaroni this, raviolo that. What with meat?
Spaghetti bolognese has meat.
I don't like spaghetti. Now then, Mr. Hammond, we're going to need your help. As well as acting for Mr. Roger Ackroyd, you were also Mrs. Dorothy Farrell's solicitor, we understand?
That is correct. All her affairs pass through our hands.
You see, Monsieur Hammond, Monsieur Ackroyd believed that Madame Ferrers, she was being blackmailed. And it is possible that this blackmail and the murder of Roger Ackroyd, they might be connected.
Blackmail, eh?
You are surprised?
No, that explains a great many things. During the past year, Mrs. Ferrers sold certain securities, but the money was paid into her account and not reinvested. I always imagined that the money was being paid to some woman who had a claim on the late Mr. Ferrers.
And what was the amount of the salary?
In all, I should say the sums involved totaled at least £20,000.
£20,000? I could retire tomorrow and go live in the south of France.
No. You would not approve of the food, Chief Inspector.
Well, none of our merry band of suspects shows any sign of having come into that kind of money. Ah, look, Poirot, there's your old flat. Who lives there now?
No person. It is still mine.
No. Wait, I didn't know that. Well, let's go and have a look round.
No. In any case, I do not have my keys.
Yes, you do. I wondered why you wanted to walk this way. Come on.
Oh, sweetheart, my Poirot. But it is full of ghosts.
Likely ones too, son.
You know, Chief Inspector, this visit to London disturbs me. This even worse.
You were never meant to be a country bumpkin, Poirot.
Chief Inspector, you must not say such things. The life in the country, it is good for me. I have the fresh air, I have my garden. The quiet.
You should never have retired. I said so at the time.
We cannot postpone the inevitable forever, Chief Inspector. In this case, it is full of postponements.
Is it?
Oui, bien sûr. Monsieur Roger Ackroyd and Madame Ferrers, they postponed the announcement of their betrothal. Monsieur Ralph Payton and Mademoiselle Flora, the same.
I don't see where that gets us.
We'll see. But one must permit oneself to muse. From our March the 13th. Perhaps Monsieur Roger Ackroyd and Madame Ferrers, they married in secret.
Why would they do that?
Ralph Payton and Mademoiselle Flora, the same.
Well, that's more likely. But why keep it secret? Who else do we know with the initial R? What about Mr. Raymond?
Monsieur Raymond? I do not think that Monsieur Raymond is the marrying kind, Chief Inspector.
No. You see, we do keep coming back to Ralph Payton. Of course, the ring might have nothing to do with the case. I can't understand why it doesn't come forward.
Has it not occurred to you, Chief Inspector, that Monsieur Ralph Payton could be dead?
Dead? No. Well, I hope not for Flora Ackroyd's sake, if nothing else. What did you mean the other day when you said you didn't believe she'd seen her uncle at 10:10?
I don't see Chief Inspector. We must catch the train. I have also the need to escape from these ghosts. By now, the cracks were beginning to appear. There are, I am ashamed to say, certain darknesses of the heart of which even I was not aware. Who would have thought Miss Goody Two-Shoes Flora Ackroyd capable of such naughtiness?
Now, Monsieur Poirot has made a certain suggestion to me, Miss Ackroyd. He suggests that you weren't in the study at all last Friday night. You didn't see Mr. Ackroyd is very united.
Parker saw me there.
No, mademoiselle. Monsieur Parker said that he saw you coming out.
I have no idea what my life has been like since we came here. Wanting things, scheming for them, lying, cheating, running up bills and promising to pay. I hate myself. That's what brought us together, Ralph and I understood him because I'm the same underneath, but not strong enough to stand alone either of us. All right. I wasn't coming out of the study. I was in my uncle's room. I knew he always kept some cash in that drawer. I was on the stairs, coming down from Uncle Roger's bedroom, when I heard Parker crossing the hall. So I pretended that I was leaving the study. Parker, Mr. Ackroyd says he doesn't want to be disturbed.
Oh, very well.
Mademoiselle.
I took it all right. 40 pounds. And a fine father of the feet. Now you know.
Rule number 1 in kidnapping. Never believe what anyone tells you. So what could the sleuths do but start again? Back they went to Dorothy Farrell's house for another rummage through her sad existence. She really was the cause of all this fuss. Madame Ferrars had been your patient for many years, James. Had she seemed to you recently distressed?
She was a very sensitive person, you know. Not many people understood her.
But, you'll be.
She confided in me to a limited extent.
Excuse me. Madame Ferrars, she wrote many letters?
No, I don't think so. Her only relatives were in New Zealand.
Πέρασες τις πανελλαδικές και το χαμόγελό σου είναι η ελπίδα μας. Με το πρόγραμμα Καλή Αρχή της Αμυρίδης Σαββίδης ΑΕ, 30 αριστούχοι πρωτοετής εξοπλίζουν το νέο του σπίτι δωρεάν και επιπλέον 10 αριστούχοι κερδίζουν υποτροφία 3.000 ευρώ ο καθένας. Μάθε πώς στο moris.gr.
Μετά η φωνή από την άλλη άκρη της γραμμής είπε η Πία Μονταλμπάνο, οι πειρατές της 11ης θέσης. Μια σαν ησυχητική θύρα θανάτων, η επιλογή να φορέσουν φούτερ τη μέρα της ληστείας. Νουάρ, αστυνομική λογοτεχνία από τις εκδόσεις Πανάρου.
Ένα 1821. Τόσο φτά, όσο κανένα.
Φανταστικό! Μα τι ωραίο μπάνιο! Ψαραβέλης, ο καλύτερος. Έχει πράγματα πολύ καλά και φθηνά.
Ό,τι θέλεις, το έχει ο Ψαραβέλης. Αθήνα, Πειραιάς, Θεσσαλονίκη, Πάτρα. Μεγάλη έκθεση, Πέτρου Ράλι 11.
Το πρόγραμμα είναι κατάλληλο για άνω των 8 ετών.
Bonjour, madame. Good morning, Chief Inspector.
What? Oh, good morning. Listen, the police have for some days been anxious to interview Mr. Ralph Payton, the adopted son of Mr. Roger Ackroyd, whose death occurred in suspicious circumstances last Friday. Mr. Payton has now been arrested in Liverpool, where he was on the point of embarking for America. Bon? Bon? What do you mean, bon? It's all rubbish. I've been on to Liverpool. They don't know anything about it.
They would not mention it. It was me who persuaded the editor of that estimable newspaper to insert the item.
Well, we'll see if you're right, POIROT. See if your newspaper article will flush anybody out of the woodwork.
Can woodwork be flushed, Chief Inspector?
You know what I mean.
Well, if they can be flushed, then this will have flushed them.
I'm sorry. Have you been waiting ages? Sixes and sevens. Parker. Here. And Ursula not being well. She's unwell. I say unwell. She just won't come out of her room. You can hear her crying away.
Can we have a word, Miss Bourne?
Mrs. Peyton?
No point pretending I was there. Maybe since Ralph has been arrested.
The truth is what we need, Madame.
Ralph didn't do it.
Very dear, I'm inclined to agree with you, but the affair marches badly. Only the truth can save Monsieur Peyton now. So first, tell to us why you make this masquerade as the Parliament.
For a living. My father died 2 years ago, leaving nothing but debts. Debts and 5 daughters. My eldest sister was already married to a Captain Folliot.
I met your sister yesterday.
There wasn't going to be a lady parlourmaid. It was the real thing or nothing. And my sister would give me a reference.
So you got a job here?
Yes. Actually, I quite enjoyed the work. And I met Ralph. As soon as we met, we both felt the same. We wanted to get married.
On the 13th of May.
I thought I'd lost it forever. How? Where did you?
Well, we got married, and then I came back here, and Ralph stayed in London looking for work. But then he decided that the only way to pay his debts was to ask Mr. Ackroyd for help.
Still without disclosing to him your marriage.
Yes. Mr. Ackroyd was furious, but he said he'd help if Ralph married Flora Ackroyd.
And he agreed.
Yes. But he did make the stipulation that it shouldn't be announced for a while. He didn't want me to hear about it.
But he didn't.
But then last Thursday, Mr. Ackroyd got impatient and said the engagement had to be announced that weekend. So Ralph had to tell me the mess he was in.
It's quite a McCarthy old man cutting up the shit.
I said I was going to see Mr. Ackroyd and tell him we were married. Ralph begged me not to, but what else was I to do? I was so furious with Ralph that on my way home I threw away my wedding ring. I regretted it almost as soon as I'd done it, but I thought Mr. Ackroyd might have been sympathetic, but he was awful. He said I'd tried to trap Ralph for his money.
Already married?
Anyway, I'd agreed to meet Ralph that evening in the summer house to tell him how it'd gone. I met him at 9:30. That was awful.
I'm your wife.
You also told your apron.
I wondered where I'd done that. Anyway, I haven't heard or seen Ralph since. And then I heard that Mr. Ackroyd had been murdered.
Tell us, Madame Peyton, what hour was it that you parted from your husband in the summer house?
And I've gone over that again and again. I was with Ralph for
10 minutes, not longer. It was just 9:45 when I got back to the house.
Ah, there you are, Mrs. Poirot. I was just trying to find you. There's a phone call for you. Did you call me? Yes. What?
Ah, Mr. Smith. They thought that I would find you here. So now will come the biggest test. We have all been summoned to a powwow. But I'm sure the police are still in the dark. If we all hold our nerve, they won't get any more secrets out of us. But there is always a weak link, isn't there?
No, Caroline. I'm not going to pander to your mere inquisitiveness.
Oh, come on, Joe. Don't be mean.
No, Caroline. Poirot said just those people he named.
Well, I'll just drive you up there then, that's all. If you wouldn't mind. I don't have to come in. I don't see why we have to be at his beck and call.
Ah, Chief Inspector, you are so kind, please. To place it here. No. Observe. Ah, come in, please, all of you. It's so good of you to come. Please, entrez. Make yourself comfortable. Monsieur Raymond, if you please to remain.
Oh, me too. What's the great idea? Some scientific machine? Do we have electrodes on our knees to register guilty knocking?
No, Monsieur Raymond. I am old-fashioned. I work only with my native biceps. Please to sit.
Sorry.
Ah, my dear good Dr. James, welcome to you. Please to sit. You know, of course, Chief Inspector Schaff.
Good evening.
So, now let us begin. But first, I have an announcement to make. This young lady, Mademoiselle Ursula Bond, is in reality Madame Ralph Peyton. Oh, yes. She married Ralph Peyton last March.
Married? How could he be?
Shut up, Mother. And Ralph kept your secret very well. I'm very glad for you.
That's very kind. Ralph behaved so badly, especially to you. He was in a corner and took the only way out. I should have probably done the same myself in his place.
Each person here had both the motive and the opportunity to kill Monsieur Roger Ackroyd, and because he knew too much, Monsieur Parker. Madame Ralph Peyton might well have hoped to clarify her own situation if the uncle of Mademoiselle Flora did not exert pressure on her. Monsieur Raymond resented the unwillingness of Monsieur Roger Ackroyd to grant him more authority in the factory, and of course, Madame Ackroyd and Mademoiselle Flora both hoped to profit from the will of Monsieur Ackroyd.
I don't like this. I'd much prefer to go home.
aucun nom, madame, until you have heard what Poirot has to say. Please to say. Merci, madame. The problem has always been one of time. We know that Monsieur Roger Ackroyd was alive at 9:30 because it was then that Monsieur Raymond overheard him talking. But with whom was he talking? Certainly it was not the Monsieur Ralph Payton, whom we know was at that time in the summer house with his wife. So with whom? From the very beginning of this case, I have been troubled by one thing. The nature of those words spoken by Monsieur Roger Ackroyd and overheard by Monsieur Raymond. The calls on my purse have been so frequent of late that it is impossible for me to accede to your request. India, does nothing odd strike you about that?
Sounds more as if he's dictating a letter.
Exactement.
A dictaphone. Is that what you think? It doesn't change anything. Mr. Ackroyd was alive at 9:30 since he was speaking into his dictaphone.
But always we come back to Monsieur Ralph Payton. As I have said, we know that he was in the summer house with Madame Payton. But then suddenly, he disappeared. Where? He has fled the country, perhaps? Or perhaps he has become the third victim of our murderer.
No.
Or perhaps someone is helping him to conceal himself from the police. But who and where? A hotel. Far too public. A boarding house? No, certainly the same. I have it. The private nursing home. Chief Inspector Jacques made inquiries and discovered that there were in the area 2 nursing homes, and at one of them there had been admitted early on Saturday morning a certain Mr. Smith.
But Ralph would never run away.
We can ask Mr. Smith himself.
Ralph!
But I ask myself, I wonder who it is who gave authority to the nursing home for the admission of Monsieur Ralph Payton.
Poirot. Mea culpa. As soon as I heard that Ralph was back in King's Abbot and staying at the White Hart, I knew something must be wrong. I went to see him that afternoon. Eventually, he told me about his marriage and the hole he was in. There didn't seem to be anything I could do to help at the time, but that night, when the murder was discovered, I knew that suspicion fell on him. Or if not on him, on the girl he loved. The thought of his possibly having to give evidence and incriminate his wife.
My dear James, have I not told you 36 times? It is impossible to conceal anything from our people. I know precisely who murdered Monsieur Roger Ackroyd and Poor Monsieur Parker and how it was done. And this tells to me all. And tomorrow, the good Chief Inspector Jacques will make his analysis.
Now look here, Poirot. If you really know who committed this murder.
Both of the murders, Chief Inspector. Yes, I know.
Well, who is it? Can you tell us?
Poirot shall not make things easy for you. You, Chief Inspector, with your career of detection, both long and distinguished, you have your theories, I know, and you, my dear James. Maybe you have been involved in the case from the beginning, n'est-ce pas? You know intimately all of the people involved, as only the good country doctor can. But before I reveal my secret, you must both expound your theories too. And let us commence with you, James.
Me? Oh, no. I can't show myself up in front of the profession.
I got so fed up with waiting in the car. Am I going to be much longer, James?
No, maybe I'm too covered today.
No, my dear James, Madame, your brother was just going to tell us his theories about the murder. Please, do come and sit.
Yes.
Merci. So, James, tell us, what sort of man or woman are we looking for?
Woman? I hardly think it could be a woman.
And this man, was he also, do you think, a blackmailer?
Oh, I think he probably had some sort of financial arrangement with Mrs. Ferrers, yes. Somehow, certainly, he became aware of the true cause of Ashley Ferrers' death. He could even be a detective.
But perhaps as a doctor, you would have been also situated most ideally as well.
Oh, ideally. But the important moment in this case is not the murder of Ashley Ferrers, but the suicide of his widow. Her motives remain unclear, but for whatever reason, she decided to end her life. Now, this must have placed our murderer in something of a quandary. He knew about her rather distasteful affair with Roger Ackroyd. His difficulty was in knowing whether, before she died, she had confided in him the identity of the man with whom she had the financial arrangement.
You mean the blackmailer?
This was hardly some common blackmailer, Chief Inspector. He probably saw Roger Ackroyd somewhere around this time. Something in Ackroyd's manner made him wonder. And in that moment, he decided he could not take a chance. He was certainly capable of constructing some sort of device to turn a dictaphone on and off at any time he chose. I don't imagine he left the choice of weapon as much to chance as it would appear. I believe he had a weapon with him already. When it occurred to him that the dagger, which was actually on display at the scene of the crime, would cast the net of suspicion even wider. He was all ready to perform the killing when he had confirmation of his deepest fears. Mrs. Ferrers had indeed confided in Ackroyd, but not in person. She had written him a letter, and Ackroyd opened that letter in his presence and started to read it.
My very dear Roger, I would not tell you the name this afternoon, but I propose to write it to you now.
Sorry, but I must read this on my own.
At least tell me the name of the man.
No, I must read it on my own.
Very well.
I've been reading this book I found in the car, James.
It wasn't black.
Don't say any more, James.
Oh, come now, James. The man had bled Madame Farah's wife.
Dorothy wasn't adulterous, murdering bitch. She lorded it over us. The money she had, she never worked for it. With her drunk of a husband before her. They were idle, useless parasites.
Stop it, James.
No! They didn't know what it was like scrimping and saving year after year, never able to afford a holiday. On call day and night to every idiot but bilious attack for miles around. You've no right to stand in judgment on me. Blackmail, you call it blackmail? The law wouldn't punish her, would they? So I did. I've done your work for you. Sorry, Karen. Killing Ackroyd was easy. The knife was sharp. Sometimes you just for a strike. And for the rest, I simply had to follow my plan. The first thing to do was make sure everyone remembered me leaving the house.
Yes.
I drove away and parked the car all the way down the drive. Then I had to make it look as if Ralph Peyton had entered through the window. He was a pathetic, profligate fellow. I knew Ackroyd had bought a dictaphone and had been using it. Now I was going to use it to arrange for Ackroyd to speak from the grave. And then, business of the chair, so intrigued. I had left Ralph Peyton's muddy shoe outside when I entered through the window. Now, as I made my escape, I was able to use it to make a footprint on the sill.
And then, of course, the dictaphone did its work.
I'm greatly impressed by your persistence and determination. However, I'm regretful.
Which convinces us by which time you were safely back at home, awaiting the telephone call from the patient whom you had persuaded to take part in what you had told him was a practical joke.
Yes, you did well there, Cora. I was quite surprised when you showed us your telegram from the ocean liner. Well done.
Thank you.
I needed the excuse of his phone call, you see, to ensure that I was first on the scene when the murder was discovered.
Lisa, what's the matter with you, Parker? Your master has been murdered. Murdered, sir?
Note the fewer people disturb this room. I carefully calculated the position of the chair so that the dictaphone would be hidden from anyone standing in the doorway. Ring the police station. When I'd sent Parker to telephone the police, I had ample time to remove my contrivance and put the chair back in its accustomed place. Finally, I had to tell Ralph Peyton of his uncle's murder, persuade him that he was in danger, and get him to accompany me to the nursing home.
Why did you kill Parker?
Parker was too observant. He remembered that he brought in 5 letters, not 4, and that one of them was handwritten on dark blue paper. He knew he hadn't moved the chair.
How long would it be before he realized I had? No. I couldn't take that chance.
Your journey.
James Shepherd, I'm arresting you for the murder of Roger Ackroyd.
Of course you are, Chief Inspector.
James, no. This is foolish.
Don't move, either of
Are you all right, Chief Inspector? Stop! Come on, Poirot.
That's three.
Get back, Poirot! James, no! Don't face me there. Plenty of time for heroics when he runs out of ammo. That's fine. Let's go.
For the sake of the system of Dr. Shepherd, the true stories of these murders most dreadful must for the moment remain a secret. A last favor, if you would, to a man I once looked on as a friend. I thought I could escape the wickedness of the city by moving to the country. The fields that are green, the singing of the birds, the faces smiling and friendly. The fields that are green are the secret burial places of the victims of murders most hideous. The birds sing only briefly before some idiot in tweeds shoots them. And the faces all smiling and friendly. What did they conceal?
Όλα τα συναισθήματα στη νέα ψηφιακή πλατφόρμα Netflix. Netflix. Μπηκές. Hair Sky Premium Life. Λάμψη, ενδυνάμωση και ελαστικότητα στα μαλλιά για απόλυτη ισορροπία. Sky Premium Life. Συμπληρώματα διατροφής στο φαρμακείο. Τώρα τα σταθερά πακέτα ηλεκτρικής ενέργειας Genius με νέες χαμηλότερες τιμές. Είναι και εσύ Genius από 19 ευρώ το μήνα. Κάλεσε στο 18311 ή επισκέψου ένα κατάστημα Κοσμοτέ ή Γερμανός. Προτέχεια. Έτσι δείχνουμε τον δρόμο προς το μέλλον της ενέργειας. Κέρος, λίμπητο, απόδοση, αυτοπεποίθηση και τον άντρα. Sky Premium Life. Συμπληρώματα διατροφής στο φαρμακείο.
Χαίρετε κυρίες και κύριοι. Συναγερμός έχει σημάνει στις αρχές για την έξαρση των κρουσμάτων κορονοϊού στη χώρα μας. Οι επιστήμονες κρούν τον κόδωνα του κινδύνου και προειδοποιούν πως αν δεν τηρηθούν από όλους τα μέτρα προστασίας, ειδικά σε χώρους διασκέδασης και κοινωνικών εκδηλώσεων, τα πράγματα μπορεί να ξεφύγουν. Σύμφωνα με τα στοιχεία του ΕΟΔΗ, σήμερα είχαμε 121 νέα κρούσματα. Από αυτά 12 είναι εισαγόμενα και τα υπόλοιπα 109 εντοπίζονται. 47 σε Θεσσαλονίκη, 26 σε Αττική, από 8 σε Χαλκιδική, 5 από αυτά συνδέονται με Βάφτιση και Λάρισα, 7 σε Κέρκυρα, από 2 σε Ηματία και Σέρες και από 1 σε Καβάλα, Αρκαδία, Χαρία, Δράμα, Εύρο, Εύβοια, Κοζάνη, Πέλα και Χίο. Ο συνολικός αριθμός των κρουσμάτων είναι 4.855. Τέλος, δεν έχει καταγραφεί κανένας νέος θάνατος, ενώ έχουμε 209 θανάτους συνολικά σε ολόκληρη τη χώρα. Η έκρηξη των κρουσμάτων και η ανησυχία για την επόμενη μέρα οδήγησαν στην επανεμφάνιση του καθηγητή Σωτήρη Τσιόδρα. Όπως είπε, κάθε κρούσμα δίνει άλλο ένα και έτσι η πανδημία συνεχίζεται. Ο καθηγητής παρατήρησε ότι τα κρούσματα εμφανίζονται πλέον όλο και περισσότερο σε νεότερες ηλικίες και επανέλαβε πως τα επιστημονικά δεδομένα επιβάλλουν τη χρήση της μάσκας. Υπάρχουν σημάδια που μας ανησυχούν, ανέφερε ο Υφυπουργός Πολιτικής Προστασίας Νίκος Κανταλιάς, προσθέτοντας ότι ο εχθρός είναι ο εφησυχασμός. Παράλληλα, ανακοίνωσε νέα μέτρα και συγκεκριμένα από σήμερα το βράδυ στις 11 έως και τις 7 το πρωί της Τετάρτης απαγορεύεται η διέλευση από την Κακαβιά για τη διενέργεια ελέγχων, ενώ από την ερχόμενη Δευτέρα θα εγκατασταθεί μόνιμο κλιμάκιο για ελέγχους. Από την Κυριακή 16 Αυγούστου, όποιος εισέρχεται από Αλβανία θα μπαίνει σε 7ήμερη κατοίκον απομόνωση. Επίσης, παρατείνεται το όριο 100 ατόμων σε γάμους και επαυτήσια έως 31 Οδό. Προβλέπεται η δυνατότητα περιορισμού ωραρίου σε κέντρα διασκέδασης, σε τοπική κλίμακα και ξεκινούν εντατικοί έλεγχοι στα εργοστάσια τροφίμων. Στον εισαγγελέα παραπέμπονται με εντολή του Υπουργού Προστασίας του Πολίτη όσοι αναρτούν στο διαδίκτυο θεωρίες συνωμοσίας για τον κορονοϊό. Πρόκειται για αναφορές που υποστηρίζουν ότι ο COVID-19 είναι παραμύθι και παροτρύνουν τον κόσμο να μην εφαρμόζει τα μέτρα και να μην δέχεται τα πρόστιμα. Η πολιτεία δεν θα επιτρέψει τη δημιουργία αιστείων κινδύνου της δημόσιας υγείας από ανεύθυνες κοινωνικά συμπεριφορές, δήλωσε ο Μιχάλης Χρυσοφορίδης. Με εντολή του, η δίωξη ηλεκτρονικού εγκλήματος απέστειλε στην Εισαγγελία Προδοτικών Αθηνών υλικό με συγκεκριμένες αναρτήσεις προς ενημέρωση αλλά και ποινική αξιολόγηση. Η εκτείναξη των κρουσμάτων κορονοϊού παγκοσμίως, οι δραματικές προειδοποιήσεις των επιστημόνων για κοινωνική αποστασιοποίηση, αλλά και οι σφοδρές αντιδράσεις μιας μεγάλης μερίδας του πληθυσμού σε περιοριστικά μέτρα, δίνουν το στίγμα της εξάπλωσης της πανδημίας στον πλανήτη. Για δεύτερο επιδημικό κύμα το φθινόπωρο ή ακόμη και τον Αύγουστο, στη Γαλλία προειδοποιεί η Επιστημονική Επιτροπή που συμβουλεύει την κυβέρνηση, καθώς για πρώτη φορά από τον Απρίλιο αυξήθηκε ο αριθμός των ασθενών στην εντατική. Η Γερμανία είναι ήδη αντιμέτωπη με δεύτερο κύμα κρουσμάτων και η κατάσταση θα επιδεινωθεί περαιτέρω εάν οι πολίτες δεν τηρούν τους κανόνες κοινωνικής απόστασης. Προειδοποιεί ο Σύλλογος της Γερμανίας. Βάσει τα τεστ αντισωμάτων, τα κρούσματα είναι 6 φορές περισσότερα από όσα έχουν διαγνωστεί και φτάνουν το 1,5 εκατομμύριο. Στις ΗΠΑ, ο αριθμός των επιβεβαιωμένων κρουσμάτων